Have you ever known exactly what you should do and still didn't do it? You want to raise your hand and speak up, but you stay silent. You plan to get up and exercise, but stay curled up in bed. You're about to write that important email, but end up scrolling through social media instead. You know what you need to do. But something invisible holds you back. That thing holding you back. It's not laziness. It's not a lack of ability. It's hesitation. And it happens in the very first few seconds, right before you take action. Electric light bulb, the good news? All it takes is 5 seconds, just 5, to break through that barrier. You don't need to wait for motivation. You don't need to battle yourself internally. You just need one decisive moment in the first 5 seconds. And in today's video, we're going to explore why hesitation kills your actions in just a few seconds. How the 5-second rule actually works. And how you can turn it into a simple, powerful weapon to act, even when you don't feel ready. Part 1, the 5-second rule, how it works and why it's powerful. The 5-second rule, introduced by Mel Robbins, isn't just a productivity trick. It's a powerful psychological tool to break through moments of hesitation and mental inertia. The method is incredibly simple. When you have the urge to act, count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then move. It sounds almost too simple to work. But its power doesn't lie in magic. It lies in how it directly disrupts the brain's hesitation loop. Here's what's happening inside your brain. When you have the intention to act, like making a call, starting a task, or getting out of bed, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, decision-making part of your brain, begins planning. But within just seconds, your emotional brain, especially the amygdala, kicks in. It triggers feelings of fear, doubt, discomfort, or potential rejection. If you don't act within the first 5 seconds, your brain activates its protection mode and starts convincing you not to do it. You hesitate. You overthink. You miss the window to act. And this pattern keeps repeating. The 5-second rule interrupts that hesitation loop. By counting backward, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You break the negative thought pattern and shift your brain from reaction mode to action mode. Right pointing back hand index. The countdown distracts your emotional brain just long enough. Right pointing back hand index, and the moment you move, stand up, click send, open your notebook. You've already crossed the hardest part, getting started. Part 2, why the first 5 seconds matter more than you think. Most of the opportunities we miss in life aren't because we don't know what to do. We do know. You know you should speak up. You know you should start writing. You know you should walk into the gym. You know you should say no to what doesn't serve you. But you don't, because in those first few seconds, your brain wins. Fire in the first 5 seconds, you have 2 choices. Act, even if it's imperfect. Think, and fall into hesitation, fear, and procrastination. And the moment you choose to think instead of move, you're opening the door to fear, self-doubt, shame, and overthinking. Neuroscience calls this emotional override. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear and survival, gets triggered by perceived risk. Even if it's something as harmless as making a phone call or posting your first blog. It sends a message. Warning sign # danger, back off. Round pushpin. The problem is, we're not running from wild animals anymore. But our brain still reacts as if we are, to public speaking, to being judged, to starting something new. That's why you know what to do, and still don't do it. Sparkles. The 5-second rule, don't give your brain time to talk you out of it. When you count down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You interrupt the emotional signal just as it's rising. You shift your attention from hesitation to a simple command. Countdown, move. This is what psychology calls a pattern interrupt. A technique that breaks an old loop and inserts a new one. Old pattern, intention, hesitation, fear, delay. New pattern, intention countdown action. This isn't a productivity trick. It's a self-leadership strategy. What's happening inside your brain when you count down? According to research from the Brain Research Institute at the University of California, the countdown activates your prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for conscious decision-making, focus, and goal-directed behavior. That means right pointing back hand index. The countdown itself is an intentional act, and that awakens your higher brain. Right pointing back hand index. You break out of emotional autopilot and step back into control. Open book. A real example, the call that almost didn't happen. One young person shared this story. I wanted to call my mom and apologize after a big argument. But every time I picked up the phone, I put it back down. Shame, pride, fear, it held me back. One day, I just said, 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, and I dialed. I didn't think anymore. I just did it. And that call changed everything. To you, it may sound like a small act. But to that person, it was the first decision made by a new version of themselves. A version driven not by emotion, but by values and conscious choice. And if you're still wondering, can 5 seconds really make a difference? Ask yourself, how many times have you not started because of just a few seconds of doubt? How many chances did you let pass because you hesitated? How many times did you say later but never came back? No, 5 seconds won't change your whole life immediately. But they can open the door. And when you step through it, you enter a new reality, one where action is possible. Right pointing back hand index. Up next. How do you actually apply the 5-second rule in real life? From small tasks to identity-shaping decisions? Part 3, turning the 5-second rule into a daily reflex. You might be thinking, okay, it makes sense, but how do I actually use it in real life? Because the truth is, if you know about the 5-second rule but don't train yourself to use it in the moment, you'll fall back into the same old loop. You know, but you don't act. That's why the key is right pointing back hand index. Turn it into a reflex. Electric light bulb. Use it in small, but crucial, moments. The 5-second rule isn't just for big life-changing decisions like launching a business, quitting your job, or ending a relationship. In fact, it works best in the tiny moments where hesitation sneaks in and slowly drains your energy. For example, in the morning, your alarm goes off and you're tempted to hit snooze. Right pointing back hand index. 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, sit up. You glance at your book, but reach for your phone instead. Right pointing back hand index. 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, open the book. You need to reply to a client's email, but feel not ready yet. Right pointing back hand index. 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, type the first sentence. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to finish everything. You just need that first small action, taken before your brain talks you out of it. Use the 5-second rule to trigger your new identity. Every time you use this rule, you're not just getting something done. You're reinforcing your new identity. You're not the person who hesitates. You're the person who takes charge of your behavior. You're creating evidence for your brain that says, I'm someone who acts, not someone who overthinks. And if you repeat that every day, even in small ways, you'll start to feel the shift. Sparkle's confidence begins to grow. Sparkle's you approach work with more energy. Sparkle's fear gets replaced by curiosity. Sparkle's you feel lighter because you're back in control. Open book. Common situation, the silent Zoom meeting. You're in a Zoom call. The host asks a question. Everyone's silent. You have something to say, but think, maybe someone else will speak up. You hesitate. The moment passes. The opportunity is gone. Next time, try this. The moment the idea comes to mind. 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, unmute and speak. Not because you're 100% sure you're right, but because you're training yourself to act when it matters. Repeat button. Train the muscle daily. You don't need to use the 5-second rule for everything. But you can train it like a muscle, one small rep at a time. Choose 1 to 2 moments where you tend to hesitate. Set a plan: when X happens, I'll count down and take action. After each time, say to yourself, I didn't wait for motivation. I directed my behavior. That consistent action builds new belief. And that belief shapes who you become. Part 4: From one small action to a complete identity shift. We often tell ourselves, once I feel confident, I'll take action. But in reality, it's the other way around. Action creates confidence. Even the smallest action is what begins to shape who you really are. What does science say about the link between action and identity? A key behavioral psychology study from Stanford University revealed this. People don't change their identity through thoughts, they change it through repeated behaviors. Every time you repeat an action, your brain starts attaching meaning to it as part of your self-identity, a concept known as self-signaling. Right pointing back hand index: if you write a few lines every day, you'll eventually see yourself as a writer. Right pointing back hand index: if you wake up just 5 minutes earlier each morning, you'll begin to believe you're a disciplined person. Right pointing back hand index: and if you consistently act after a 5-second hesitation, you're signaling to your brain, I'm the kind of person who takes charge. So the 5-second rule isn't just helping you complete tasks. It's actually reprogramming your brain to see you in a new light. Counterclockwise arrows: repetition, the key to long-term change. The brain learns through intentional repetition. Every time you take action after counting down from 5, you're building a new behavioral pathway in your nervous system. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form and strengthen new connections. In other words, old pattern: when pressure comes you freeze. New pattern: when pressure comes you count 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1 you move. And over time, that becomes your natural reflex: no more mental struggle, no need for motivation. Seedling from reflex identity: big results. When you act even before you feel ready, you're proving to yourself, I don't need motivation to live by my values. I don't need to be perfect to begin. I can move first, and the confidence will follow. Repeat that message enough, and you won't just believe it. You'll become it. You won't need motivation to start. You'll become the kind of person who is always ready to begin. Open book: a real story from an Olympic athlete. Mel Robbins once shared the story of a US Olympic athlete who used the 5-second rule. Before each intense training session, she often found herself hesitating. But instead of overthinking, she used the rule 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, and simply walked out the door, even if she didn't feel ready. Weeks later, her coach noticed something shift. Not only is she showing up more consistently, her confidence and reaction time during competition have drastically improved. That ability to act before emotions interfere gave her an edge even beyond physical technique. It gave her mental strength and identity control. Openlock: the 5-second rule, more than just a productivity hack. This rule isn't just about getting more done. It's about rewriting your subconscious identity map. From someone who's controlled by emotions to someone who can direct their own behavior. Pushpin: in the final part, we'll summarize the true power of the 5-second rule and show you how to start today by turning it into a life-changing reflex. Part 5: 5 seconds may be small, but they shape your life. We often glorify the big decisions: choosing a career, moving to a new city, starting a business. But the truth is, those major decisions are all built on countless tiny moments. And the first 5 seconds of hesitation, that's where your most important choices are truly made. The shortest moment, the clearest choice. In every second you waver between doing and not doing, you're asking yourself one powerful question. Will I let emotions control my actions? Or let actions shape how I feel? No one sees you in that moment. No one applauds when you get out of bed, open your email, or speak your truth. But those invisible actions, they are the bricks that build who you become. And if you miss today's 5 seconds, You might miss out on the next 5 years. Because every action you don't take is a version of yourself that never gets built. Counterclockwise arrows from small actions to a system of living. The 5-second rule isn't just about finishing tasks. It's a reminder that you have the power to act before emotion interferes. You can control your impulses, not to be stronger than others, but to live in alignment with who you believe you can become. Imagine this. Each day, you take 3 actions you previously hesitated on. In 1 month, you have 90 pieces of proof, I'm someone who takes action. In 1 year, you're living as a completely different person. Without needing a transformation, without relying on motivation. Open book stories from ordinary people who chose not to be ordinary. A student once shared, I used to stay quiet in class and wait for someone else to speak first. Then I started using the 5-second rule. Within a week, my teacher said I was more engaged. I wasn't smarter, just less afraid. A content creator said, every time I tried to post my first video, I deleted it. But one day I counted 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, and hit upload. That video launched the journey I'm on now. Bullseye, the 5-second rule, no grand gestures, just consistent choices. Remember, you don't need to feel confident before you act. You act, and then confidence comes. You don't need to be ready to begin. You begin, and clarity will follow. You don't need to be great to start. You start, and become stronger with every step. Final part, 5 seconds may not change the world, but they can change you. You don't need to wait for inspiration. You don't need to feel confident. You don't need to be 100% sure everything will work out. You just need 5 seconds of courage. Because you know what? Your life doesn't change in big, flashy moments. It changes in the quiet ones. When you choose to sit up instead of staying in bed. When you pick up the phone to say I'm sorry. When you raise your hand to speak, even as your heart races. It all begins in those short 5 seconds. But if you stay consistent, one day you'll look back and realize, I'm no longer the person who hesitates. I'm no longer the one who procrastinates. I'm someone who takes action. And I've built myself through moments that once seemed small. Bullseye right now, start the countdown. A new chapter doesn't begin on some perfect day. It begins right now, as you finish this video, when you choose to scroll on to the next distraction. Or to count 5 to 4, 3 to 2, 1, and do the thing you know you need to do. You could write the first sentence. Clean your workspace. Send that one message you've been holding off. Or simply stand up and say, I'm starting. If this video spoke to you, don't forget to thumbs up sign like this video to tell the algorithm this content matters. Speech balloon comment below, what will you use the 5-second rule for today? Bell subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Push pin and remember, you don't need inspiration. You don't need perfection. You just need to start within the first 5 seconds. See you in the next video.